I was at a conference around 4 years ago where one of the speakers got up and talked about this concept of branding. And he started off by mentioning that he really didn't think that advisors traditionally have done a good job of not only explaining the value that they provide and the problems that they solve, but he noticed that there was difficulty in explaining it in a way that people understood easily and also in a format that they really enjoyed. One of the solutions he threw out to the crowd was this idea of, hey, when you tell people about what you do, what they like to hear about is a good story. And I know a lot of people have taken that concept back and, developed a personal story about something that happened to them or just something that happened early on in their life that inspired them to do what they do. But when I took this concept back to our firm, I thought about, is there a way to come up with a story that's specific to our firm, that's unique, that wasn't centered around me, or, come up with a story that would live beyond my career here at the firm? And really what came out of that was this concept of what we call building your wealth bridge, which really, kind of was launched in full when I published my book around 2 years ago. But today we're excited to launch a new tool that we think is the second iteration of really bringing this concept to life, which we call our interactive wealth bridge. And really what this tool is an interactive ecosystem where people can go in and I think really kind of experience a lifetime of financial planning and just learn it by kind of clicking around, looking at all the different pieces, of this tool. And really at the end of the day, it's a layered metaphor for how people accomplish the financial goals they set out to achieve. Just to kind of go into some of the features of this tool, it really started, with kind of bringing this concept off of the page, and the details were really important to me in building this tool. We built in sound effects. We really built in what we think is kind of the, true depiction of people's experience going through their lifetime of financial planning. And at its base, it's not too dissimilar from, a lot of concepts about how people go through the financial planning. It starts with, an investor that's in the middle of the storm that's really trying to make their way to what we call their financial sanctuary. As hokey and cliche as that may sound, it really is, what people are looking to do is they recognize that it's a really difficult journey to go from the starting point of where they're at with their finances and get to a place where they're going to feel comfortable and secure. And they get that there's going to be, difficulties and twists and turns along the way as part of this journey. Really the core of this experience is what we call the wealth bridge itself. And there's a couple of different pieces to the wealth bridge that I think are important for people to look at. Really, this wealth bridge is descriptive of our true process at our firm of how we help people approach their financial planning. And really, we think there's 12 main areas from tax planning to insurance planning to estate planning to even something like cybersecurity. These are all core areas that people have to address as part of their financial plan. And you can see in interacting with these tools that within each of these pillars that are holding up the bridge, there are individual planks that represent the kind of individual, more specific financial techniques that people, need to be looking at, reviewing, talking about with their professionals, whether that be a financial advisor or an accountant or an attorney. You can see within tax planning, some of these might include, hey, adjusting my tax withholding or looking at Roth conversions or thinking about something like an intra-family loan. And what we thought was really important, as part of this journey is to give people different resources that they can use to learn about these items before they start talking with a firm like ours. And that's part of what we think is really unique about this tool is, a lot of firms will kind of vaguely describe their process of, hey, we're going to get to know you and your family. We're going to analyze your documents. We're going to suggest a plan, and then we're going to implement and review it. But people really don't have a good sense of the specific things that they're going to be looking at over the course of 20 years and working with them. We really wanted to provide people with a way to not only get a sense of the items we look at for clients, but how they can start thinking about them for themselves. And so for each of these individual planks, we've provided, a video that can be used as an educational resource for people. We've included as part of each of these planks, different sub resources. Some of those are just LinkedIn posts. Some of them are calculators that our firm has developed. We've got podcast episodes. We've got case studies. We've got different playbooks that we've developed. So we've got in all between the videos and the resources, additional resources as part of this tool. We've got over 100 different resources that people can use to start educating themselves on the items that they want to focus on as part of their financial plan. I mentioned there's several different layers to this process. One thing I think is important, we've got these pillars which represent the core areas you need to focus on. We've got the planks that represent the individual financial decisions you need to make. One thing we developed as part of this tool is you'll see that there are waves hitting up against the pillars from time to time. And really what that represents is just the uncertainty that arises as you're crossing this wealth bridge. And we've developed, 12 additional videos that kind of go through what we think are different pain points or uncertainties that people have to deal with as they're crossing this bridge. And these are really the core things to think about, even after you pass some of these core areas. You may think, hey, I've got my estate plan, the items are drafted, I'm done with it. One thing you need to be concerned about is, well, when do I need to go back and review that, right? So these uncertainty videos really go through, some of those different pain points you might experience, things you might not be aware of, things you need to be concerned about as it pertains to, what professionals do I need to be using? What does my review cadence need to look like? There's a lot included in this tool, but we really wanted to kind of create something that we thought was differentiated. Of course, I could be wrong, but I do think this is kind of a one of a kind tool that doesn't necessarily exist in our industry currently. I had trouble finding something as an example to build off of as I was building it. But really what we wanted to serve as, it's really just an educational tool for people that are looking to kind of take their next step in their financial plan. I think more importantly, for people that are looking to hire an advisor, we wanted to create something that was a little bit different, that really gave people a true sense of what it's like to work with a firm, the different items they're looking at, the different professionals that they're going to suggest you involve as part of your process, how they coordinate with those professionals. And at the end of the day, just kind of give them, a format or a story of, how you're going to get me from where I'm at now to the goals that, I have set for myself, and, how you're going to help me address all the difficulties that I'm going to have to overcome as part of that process. So I hope you enjoyed, this launch of the Interactive Wealth Bridge. I hope you get a lot of use out of it. And if anyone has any questions about it, please don't hesitate to let me know.